I'm Jimmy Ibbotson. Welcome to the spring issue of Sea Fans Video Magazine.
Hi, I'm Lynn Eisaguirre. This issue will bring you some old diving favorites as well as some new discoveries.
Our first destination is one of the best-kept secrets in the Caribbean.
One of our roving Sea Fans reporters, Betsy Howard, brings us a scoop, Saba.
It's an island of old-world charm and virgin diving.
From the distance, the Pinnacle Island rises straight up from the sea and seems to disappear into the mist. For years, dangerous reefs and steep slopes discouraged all but the most dedicated travelers. But now, this lush island with its virgin underwater world waits open and inviting for recreational divers.
Hi, I'm Betsy Howard, and this is Saba, an imposing presence rising out of the blue waters of the Eastern Caribbean.
The storybook island has finally joined the 20th century with the road that couldn't be built. Locals call the building of the road the greatest event in the history of Saba. Dutch engineers declared the feat impossible, so a local man, Joseph Hassel, designed the road after taking a correspondence engineering course in 1947. Taking 20 years to build by hand, the 9-mile road is a roller coaster ride, complete with plunging vistas of the sea. Luckily, drivers are required by law to have their cars' brakes and transmissions checked every 6 months. Even in the villages, cars have to squeeze by each other on stone wall-lined streets. Drivers toot their horns around dangerous curves and then honk at friends for good measure. There's a saying on Saba, there are no strangers here, only guests. Before the road, the only way to get around the island was on foot or by donkey, so the hills are laced with trails and stone steps. Porters carried everything from a piano to groceries up these steps. Now, most hotels and guest houses provide walking sticks, for hiking is still a popular activity. Of course, the most popular water sport is diving, and 2 words describe the diving on Saba: virgin and variety. Many places claim to have virgin diving, but on Saba, it's more than a sales pitch. For the beginner or the fish watcher, there are shallow reefs filled with life. If you like more drama, there are sheer walls covered with sponges and coral. Pinnacles and seamounts disappear into the depths around the island. Lava flows and sand chutes add to the varied diving. And there are overhangs, caves, and elkhorn coral forests for the explorer. Also, few fishermen operate on Saba, so both the numbers and varieties of fish are astounding. Huge tarpon and barracuda are common sights, and from October to April, you can hear, and if you're very lucky, see humpback whales migrating south. Above the waterline, take some time to discover the long-hidden secrets of Saba. The first stop on an island tour might be the town of the Bottom. Popular legend has it that the name refers to the bottom of the extinct volcano which formed the island. But the bottom actually comes from the Dutch word bot, which means bowl and refers to the valley in which the town is located. The Bottom is the island's official capital, the largest settlement, and a mere 800-step walk from the shoreline. The Bottom is a Dutch-style village with whitewashed houses, gabled red roofs, and gardens. If you're a tennis buff, there's a public court here at the Bottom. Another 1,000 feet above sea level is Windward Side, Saba's second largest village and the location of the island's 2 hotels, most of the shops, and the museum. The Harry L. Johnson Memorial Museum is filled with the memorabilia of the Johnson family and antique furnishings. Formerly the home of a Dutch sea captain, the building is a fine example of early island architecture. The windows are decorated with white lace curtains fashioned by island lace makers. These local women make Saba drawn threadwork, a complex embroidery that resembles lace. First brought to the island in the late 1800s by a South American Spanish convent, the work is world famous, known as Saba lace or Spanish work.
Well, it's made by your cut and pull the threads for what the different patterns you're going to do, because like this one, you have to count how many holes you're going to put. You have to know exactly how many to put on each side. After you cut and pull the threads, you do the edging, then you stitch it on a piece of cardboard, and then you do the pattern. Like this one, those are with a crochet.
What kind of material are these made out of?
On linen, Irish linen from Ireland. And this is the Saba, the Irish linen with the name of the island, Saba.
These talented ladies also make a sweet and secret liqueur known as Saba spice. Although they won't reveal the exact recipe, we are able to find out that it's made by boiling anise seed, cinnamon, orange peel, cloves, nutmeg, spice bush, brown sugar, and 150 proof rum. For joggers or others who haven't had enough exercise hiking around the island, from windward side you can take the 1,064 steps up to Mount Scenery. Here, from halfway up Mount Scenery, it's obvious why Saba is called the unspoiled queen of the Caribbean. Look at her crown. The estimated hiking time from windward side is 1 hour, but allow time to admire the rainforest flowers. The two other settlements on the island, St. John's and Hell's Gate, also cling precariously to the mountains. At St. John's, there's a spectacular view of the island of St. Eustatius to the south. The history of Saba seems as clouded as the top of Mount Scenery. After an early sighting by Columbus on his second voyage, nothing much seems to have happened until Sir Francis Drake sailed by 100 years later. Historians agree that the Dutch settled the island in the 1640s. Since then, true to the Caribbean pattern, the island changed hands among the French, Dutch, and English 12 times. But since 1816, Saba has had a stable government as a member of the Netherlands Antilles. During most of its history, the sea sheltered Saba. Until 50 years ago, it was nearly inaccessible to the outside world, without an airport or a safe harbor. Landings by boat to the island required local expertise. Then there were the 800 steps that led up to the bottom and the other villages. The first car, a Jeep, arrived in 1947. There was no electric power until 1963. Today, Saba has modern conveniences, but this quaint island remains unspoiled, above and below the water. A good place to begin to explore underwater Saba might be Diamond Rock. The dive is along a wall around the base of a pinnacle rising out of a sandy bottom. Looking up the vertical face from the bottom through the typical 100-foot visibility, you can see the surf breaking on the rocks above. The dive goes to 100 feet, and the wall is covered with anemones, encrusting coral, and sponges. There's plentiful fish life everywhere you look. A stonefish camouflages itself against the rock, and blue tangs and rock beauties swarm around the pinnacle. Our dive guide says the rock beauties feeding on damselfish eggs create this unusual feeding frenzy. Another deep dive, Tent Reef Wall, has a sheer vertical face from 30 to 100 feet, marked with colorful overhangs and sponges. Blue tangs seem to engulf the divers here. Three popular deep dives are the seamounts of Outer Limits, Twilight Zone, and Third Encounter. Sponges and soft coral dot the lunar-like landscape of these pinnacles, and large groupers and jacks make their home around the mounts. Watch out for bristleworms on these dives. They're interesting to look at, but poisonous to touch. Saba lies in the Netherlands Antilles in the eastern Caribbean. The island sits about 25 miles to the southwest of St. Martin. The island itself is the top of an ancient volcano and covers just over 5 square miles, with a jumble of ravines and mountains. Most of the dives around the island are within 15 minutes by boat. The dive operators leave from Fort Bay on Saba. There are no beaches on Saba, but the island boasts commanding views of the surrounding ocean and nearby islands. There are several qualified operators and liveaboards to choose from for a trip to Saba. Saba Deep is on the harbor at Fort Bay. The shop has a 20-foot privateer and a longer covered boat. Saba Deep is part of the Surfside Water Sports Network and provides resort courses and a 5-day certification course. Sea Saba is a full-service dive shop on the hill in Windward Side, run by PADI instructors Joan and Louis Burke. The Burke shop has the latest gear and underwater cameras for photo buffs. They also have a privateer and a covered boat. 2 liveaboard dive boats serve the island. The Coral Star is a luxury dive yacht with grand appointments and lots of room. The Caribbean Explorer is a fast mobile dive resort with a dive deck well designed to maximize diving convenience. Each boat spends 3 days at Saba as part of their week-long trips to the area. Only one cruise ship stops regularly at the island, the 4-masted schooner Polynesia. Passengers can arrange for one of the local operators to take them diving. One reason the dives on Saba are so pristine is that diving came relatively late. The dive operators here service less than 2,000 divers per year. Then, too, the island is developing a marine park with the help of Tom Van Hoff, the man responsible for parks at Bonaire and Curacao.
Why was the Marine Park program instituted?
The Marine Park is being established now to preserve the nearshore marine environment. We have a very interesting and varied environment, and we would like to preserve this for the benefit of the people, not just the local people who should be able to continue to fish in the area, to continue to harvest, but also for foreign people, foreign visitors like the diving community. We would like to preserve and manage the area in such a way that we can allow for sustainable use of the area.
How many dive sites do you have on the island?
We have 26 dive sites now with mooring buoys. When you're adventurous enough to do drift diving, there are a couple of other sites that can be added. I'd say about 35 dive sites in total. There's plenty of variation, and there's plenty of good diving to keep you busy for a week of diving.
What are your future plans for the program?
There are going to be a number of focuses. We are concentrating quite a bit on creating facilities for park users and providing service to park users. Like we are doing a slide program for divers and dive groups that come to the island. We're going to expand that. We have created a mooring buoy system that might need to be expanded also in the future because of the interest of the diving community right now.
Divers pay $1 per dive to support the marine park. It's a good way to support this fine program. The dramatic mountainous nature of the island does create some siltation in the shallow dives around Saba. It's the same problem divers encounter with any vegetated vertical island, unlike flat desert rocks such as Bonaire, Cayman, or Cozumel. As divers, we pay for the dramatic scenery above the waterline with reduced coral formations in the shallows below. Still, shallow dives like Torrance Point provide dramatic elkhorn coral and interesting rock formations. And at Ladder Bay, there's a scenic shallow area that's a patch reef sloping into a deep trench. Large coral heads cover the bay, and schools of barracuda are common sights on this dive. At Tent Reef, known for its fishes, a grouper takes advantage of a cleaning station. We watch a boxfish cleaning the silt off the coral, and a drumfish sneaks out of its cover. On the surface, there are several hotels and guest houses on Saba, along with apartments to rent. Information on what's available can be obtained from the tourist board. The largest hotel, the Captain's Quarters, sports gingerbread trim, with antique furniture, private baths, and sweeping views. There's a large freshwater pool, and dining in the garden with continental and Saba cuisine. We arrived by boat, but we've heard reports that the plane landing in Saba should not be missed. The runway is billed as the world's shortest, and specially designed planes land between the mountains and the sea. The 20th century has finally revealed the secrets of Saba to the traveler, yet the old world charm of Dutch villages and friendly people remains. And Saba's underwater lushness waits pristine and varied for divers to come and take the plunge. If you plan to dive Saba, there are a few things you'll want to know before you go. Hi, I'm Betsy Howard with FYI, information and news for and about divers. The easiest way to get to Saba by air is through the gambling and yachting capital of the Eastern Caribbean, St. Martin. Transfer there to Win Air for one of 3 daily flights on to Saba. No passport is necessary, just your driver's license, birth certificate, or voter registration card. And be prepared to show a return ticket. Although Dutch is the official language, everyone speaks English. The florin, or guilder, worth about 57 cents, is the official currency. Your American dollars are also welcome, but your credit cards aren't. The lifestyle, dress, and social customs of Saba are casual. The island is known for warm days, around 80 degrees year-round, but nights can cool to 60, so take along a light sweater. A cave dive is one thing, but a cave dive to 320 feet isn't just a cave dive, it's a world record set by Wes Skiles and his team of diver scientists. The site, Waukulla Springs, outside of Tallahassee, Florida. The record penetration was achieved as part of a series of dives to learn the origin and makeup of northern Florida's underground spring system. The team released special dives to track water movement, proving their theory that the area's springs are all interconnected. Wes's team, diving on mixed gas and using German-made propulsion units, penetrated Waukulla a linear distance of 4,400 feet at a maximum depth of 320 feet. An exploration like this isn't for the casual recreational diver. It requires months of planning and a great deal of special equipment. Each diver carried 9 tanks, pumped up to 5,000 psi. One team member, Bill Stone, used an air rebreather of his own design to stay down for 24 straight hours. One of the scientists' more startling discoveries in Waukulla Springs was a collection of mastodon bones, which the divers left underwater where they found them. Following the 320-foot deep dive, which lasted only 80 minutes, Wes's explorers faced decompression. Even though they were using custom dive tables which reduced decompression time by 3/4, it still took 12 hours, with the first stop at 210 feet. This videotape was shot by Wes Skiles. Coming up next, a chance to meet Wes and learn his still photography techniques in this issue's photo clinic. I'll be back later with more news from the world of diving.
Wes Skiles may be one of the world's most experienced cave divers and underwater cave photographers. He's fresh from several assignments with National Geographic.
This issue he brings us our photography clinic from Jenny Springs, Florida, where he focuses on creating new effects with multiple light sources.
I first met Wes Skiles when we were here in Jenny Springs, Florida some time ago to do a story for Sea Fans. And I was really impressed with Wes's unique method of using multiple light sources in his underwater photography. So we decided to come back to Jenny Springs and spend some time with Wes, find out just how he goes about doing that. Welcome to Sea Fans, Wes.
Thank you, John. It's good to be here.
How long have you been here in Jenny Springs diving?
Oh, I've been diving at Jenny for 14 years now.
How'd you first get started in your diving career?
Well, I was just naturally attracted to diving as a kid, watching Sea Hunt and all the classics with the water scenes. And so I sought out diving in junior high school and got right into it as soon as I was certified and have been involved with it ever since.
Did you then develop into underwater photography after you got started diving?
No, I actually was taking pictures before my diving career as a surfer photographer, trying to capture the images of surfers riding waves on the East Coast.
There's a really special dimensionality to your photographs underwater. How do you go about capturing that?
Well, when I first started taking photographs in low light environments where strobes were really necessary to capture the images, like in caverns and caves, I started to notice a flat type of appearance to my photography, a lack of depth. So I started trying to use multiple strobes at that point to bring in some extra dimension into the photography, and I discovered that it can be done quite successfully.
What exactly do multiple strobes enable you to do in the water?
Well, by using one strobe on the camera synced into it and allowing models to hold additional strobes which are on slave modes with special slave sensors, you're able to achieve a real neat balance of light through a fairly long area and really illuminate things nicely. This particular photograph is flat. It lacks a presence because there's only one strobe firing from the camera to the diver. To change this, I add a second strobe utilizing an additional diver in the background to help aim and center the strobe to create this backlighting effect. I use two strobes, the one on the camera that I'm using firing at the diver, and a slave strobe behind the model which fires off and provides the backlighting. Now, to change this effect completely, doing something very similar, I take the strobe and change the direction that it's pointing. And here you have the same setup. The camera and the strobe are pointing and firing at the model. But the model has the strobe mounted on her tank. She's holding the slave in her hand, and that fires the light backwards, lighting up additional background area. This brings out the image, makes it almost three-dimensional, and lights a longer section of the passageway.
Wes, you've mentioned the strobes involved in your underwater photographic work. Could you tell us a little bit about the strobe equipment that you use?
Sure, John. Anybody that gets into the multiple strobe photography needs to consider different features that are available on the strobes on the market. One of the most important, actually mandatory, is to have a removable cord bulkhead. This way you can take the cord off that's usually designed to sync in with your camera systems and maybe change to the slave cord mode that would plug into the strobe itself. So this, like I said, is a mandatory feature if you want to accomplish the objective of multiple strobe work. Another real nice feature that you should look for in a strobe is to have a wide angle of coverage. It's the objective of most photographers to try to make their lighting subtle so that the person viewing the slide doesn't really know where the lights come from. Narrow beam strobes, especially when doing multiple lighting techniques, will show, so the wider the better. One other handy feature that I try to incorporate is to turn the strobe into a light by adding a handle making it look more like a light. The models can then swim through the water holding what does appear to be a light, and it looks real natural.
Well, Wes, when you have this light off in your model's hand some distance from you in the water, how do you get the strobe here to fire the light up at the same time as your camera shutter?
What we use here is a remote slave sensor. These are commercially available sensors that attach into the cord, and the model holds the strobe and aims this back towards the source strobe, which will be on the camera. And when the strobe fires off, it simultaneously picks up the signal through the sensor and fires the other strobe in sync with the camera strobe.
Great. I'm looking forward to taking all this in the water and seeing how it works.
First thing we're going to do is one of my favorites. It's a backlighting technique. We'll take the strobe and we'll hide it in a little hole so the camera won't be able to see it. We'll also hide the slave sensor so that it can't be seen, and we'll line you up over on that wall in line with the slave strobe. And then I'll get over here and take a photograph at you, and when I do so, the strobe behind you will fire off and it'll give you that backlighting effect. Another thing we'll do is we'll take the strobe and mount it directly to your tank. I'll put a bungee there, and I'll just lift up the bungee and slide the strobe underneath the tank. And then what we can do is we can have you swim away and turn around and look at me. And when I take the photograph, my strobe will fire down onto you, and then your strobe will fire off via the slave sensor and light up the background. It's a real neat technique that gives you nice, long, extended images. In this photograph, we're using two strobes pointing the same direction. The model is pointing the slave strobe in a direction that there will be a silhouette type effect or a frame of the diver as they're swimming down the passageway. This could be a real nice technique being used on a reef as a diver swims towards the reef, framing themselves in line with the reef, and when the picture's taken, you get a nice balanced effect. This is a totally different technique using a hard wire from the strobe the model's holding directly to the camera. It's a single strobe technique, and I like to use this when you want to get a good dynamic silhouette. It's easy to do, to take the extension cord from the camera and connect it to the strobe and give it to the diver, and some really dynamic effects can be created by doing this. This is a handy technique in which several different objectives are being achieved. Here I'm perpendicular to a diver with a wall in the background. This would be real useful in lighting up a section of reef or an overhang or in a cave such as this photograph. By aiming the strobe at the diver, you light up the diver himself, and then that diver points the strobe towards the wall, the reef, or the ledge and illuminates that ledge. So you get a real nice multi-dimensional effect, lighting up the reef and lighting up the diver. This photograph, quite a few things are going on. I'm taking the strobe and firing it to the diver, lighting up the diver, sort of the standard in each one of these photographs. But the diver in this case is holding a light, which is showing that they're night diving, or in this case cave diving, and the other strobe, also held by the model, is pointing backwards. Again, it's creating a frame-like effect and background lighting, which brings a lot more dimension to the image. It's sort of a grand finale by adding a third strobe to the multiple lighting techniques. Two new things can be accomplished. The first is to elongate the image area that can be photographed. That third strobe can add even more dimension and depth to the image that you're trying to capture. Here we're looking through a long stretch of clear water, none of which you would have seen without the third strobe. The picture would have been less dynamic and less lit with only the two strobes. Another effect that can be created by the three strobes is an addition of shades and hues and shadows sort of the image quality can be increased by bringing the third strobe into the picture. This photograph, two strobes are facing each other, and the third is mine firing back at the model itself. So you have a real nice presence here of shadows and contrasting colors created by the third strobe.
Well, Wes, your multiple strobe technique sure adds a lot to cavern photos. And I can see great potential for it on the open reef, too. Thanks for illuminating us.
One of our ongoing features in Sea Fans is to keep you up to date on the latest news in liveaboard dive boats. Liveaboards seem to be increasing in popularity these days as more and more divers find they can make better use of their dive time by living right on the water.
And liveaboards are changing rapidly. This issue we're featuring the newest Cayman Aggressor. The Aggressor fleet may just set the standard for liveaboard dive boats, and the latest Aggressor is no exception.
Why a liveaboard dive boat at Grand Cayman Island? That's the question I asked when we heard of the growing popularity of the Cayman Aggressors. With a vast variety of hotel and condo accommodations all around the island and great dive sites within a few minutes of 7 Mile Beach, why would anyone want to spend a week on a boat here? We came on board the Cayman Aggressor 3 to find out. After our week, we could see at least 4 solid reasons for the Aggressor's popularity: mobility, convenience, comfort, and professional service. Both of the Aggressors operating out of Georgetown, Grand Cayman, the Aggressor 2 and the Aggressor 3, are trim aluminum-hulled craft over 100 feet in length. Formerly crew boats serving the oil rigs off the Gulf Coast, they were completely rebuilt for dive service. Now the modern twin diesel engines cruise at 15 knots per hour to all the diving around the Caymans. Some of the best and most dramatic diving on Grand Cayman lies along the north and south shores. Both these areas aren't always accessible to all the land-based dive operators. Part of the Aggressor's appeal is that it can readily transport divers to these special Cayman attractions. Along the north wall, divers swim through a school of large silvery tarpon at New Tarpon Alley, or encounter eagle rays, or explore coral formations all along the wall. In North Sound, Aggressor passengers dive with almost tame stingrays on the shallow bottom at Stingray City. On another day, the highlights might be the unexplored walls or a scooter cruise through Elkhorn Gardens along the South Shore. In addition, the Aggressor offers an opportunity that no land-based dive operation on Grand Cayman can match: the chance to visit neighboring Little Cayman Island and experience the drama of diving the incomparable Bloody Bay walls. All of this variety is remarkably convenient. The back half of the Aggressor's main deck offers a well-laid-out dive staging area with personal gear lockers, sit-down tank racks, and ample area for suiting up. So divers avoid carrying dive equipment back and forth from boat to hotel or waiting for the boat or the group. When the Aggressor arrives at a dive site, Captain Wayne Hassan gives a thorough briefing, and then we're free to dive whenever we want. Divers just sign up on the logging board and then take a few steps down to the dive platform for easy water level entries. If you don't like walking down ladders with a tank on your back, choose a 6-foot giant stride from the main deck. The Aggressor spends several hours at almost every site, so we can explore at our leisure or make multiple dives. And with the heavy-duty moorings that the Aggressor fleet has helped install as part of the Cayman Marine Parks program, we dive without concern about a boat anchor damaging the coral. The large in-water ladders provide for easy returns to the boat in calm water. In rough seas, we have to approach them carefully. After a freshwater shower on the dive platform, guests relax on the sun deck while the crew refills tanks at the large capacity filling station, and the boat moves on to a new site. While the Aggressors are primarily designed for diving mobility and convenience, a week aboard doesn't require any major sacrifices in hotel-like comfort. 18 guests stay in adequately sized, air-conditioned rooms. Although I get a little claustrophobic in a room without windows, the cabins are cheerfully decorated, and I enjoy the convenience of a vanity and mirror. 2 modern heads below decks contain hot showers and plenty of fresh water from the water maker on board. The Aggressor even boasts a washer and dryer. Inviting meals and snacks are served topside or in the main deck dining room lounge area. After dinner, the room becomes a theater for viewing slides or watching videos of the day's diving. Or, if the water still beckons, night diving is especially convenient from a liveaboard like the Aggressor. Whether I'm encountering a prowling lobster, swimming with a moray, or playing with a friendly octopus, I like knowing that a warm shower, dry towel, hot chocolate, and comfortable bed are all right above me. Perhaps the most impressive aspect of the Aggressor is the personal service and professional attention to detail that permeates the operation. The crew seems always ready with a helping hand or a fresh towel after a dive, or a drink and a story at the topside bar. A professional photographer accompanies each trip. With the large camera storage and work table, photo and video instruction, and onboard E6 processing lab, underwater photographers can see their work improve with every dive. Finally, a host of little details stands out. From the springs that hold open the equipment lockers, to the air hose at the camera table, to the white tanks that help identify the crew members underwater, the Aggressors establish an appealing standard for live-aboard dive travel. Captain Wayne Hassan, manager for the fleet operations, sums up the Aggressor philosophy.
Well, we just took a hunch that there was a market out there for people that wanted to go on live-aboard dive boats and have just a little bit more luxury and a lot more privacy and so on with a small number of people.
We think Wayne, his wife Ann Davis, and all the Aggressor staff have met this goal with flying colors. The Aggressor escapes the traffic of 7 Mile Beach, offering an attractive option for Cayman diving fans.
Getting to Cayman is easy, with frequent daily flights from Miami, Houston, and Atlanta. More FYI after this.
Fly Cayman Airways. Fly Cayman Airways. The Caymanian way to fly. Fly Cayman Airways. The Caymanian way to fly. Fly Cayman Airways.
At Sunset House, you'll have more fun below because we have what it takes up top. For more than a quarter of a century, we've been a full-service dive resort with 42 air-conditioned rooms located just 20 yards from the water's edge, an oceanfront restaurant and bar, 3 comfortable custom-built dive boats, and a complete dive shop. Sunset House is where you'll make dive buddies for life because Sunset House dive masters are a very special breed, ready to give you special attention for a very special vacation. Ready to complete your underwater education with PADI or NAUI open water checkout dives. Sunset House's award-winning dive masters become your friends, and that's why our guests come back again and again. After your day of diving, enjoy the island's only thatched roof bar where you'll meet as many locals as tourists. Yes, it goes without saying that a dive vacation at Sunset House will give you the best diving ever. For divers, by divers. Sunset House.
One call does it all. Let Surfside Water Sports arrange your Cayman vacation. Surfside for diving and snorkeling trips. Surfside for PADI or NAUI dive instruction. Surfside for windsurfing, sport fishing, parasailing, jet skis, and underwater video. Call Surfside to book your condo and arrange your rental car. For much more than just a diving vacation, let Surfside do it all. But if the fast pace and excitement of 7 Mile Beach isn't your scene, relax. Escape to tranquil Rum Point for Cayman's best North Wall diving. Surfside at Rum Point is prepared to handle everything from your accommodations to your dive schedule, so you can unwind without a care. And even a non-diver can experience the excitement of North Sound's amazing stingrays from our glass-bottom boat, or a close-up snorkel amongst these graceful creatures. Surfside does it all, from the glitter of 7 Mile Beach to the splendid quiet of Rum Point, or a combination package of both. Call Surfside for much more than just a diving vacation.
The closest resort to Grand Cayman's fantastic North Wall, Spanish Cove is in a class by itself. Although just minutes away from the duty-free shopping of Georgetown and the glitter of famous 7 Mile Beach, Spanish Cove is insulated from the hustle and bustle. This charming and formal resort is the ideal locale for your Grand Cayman adventure. Enjoy sumptuous buffets prepared by Spanish Cove's award-winning chef. Learn new skills in the comprehensive photographic center and video lab. Film shot in the morning will be ready for you by mid-afternoon. Custom-designed boats built especially for North Wall conditions leave daily from Spanish Cove's dockside dive shop. Or grab a tank anytime and slip right off the dock to dive the wall. It's only 75 feet offshore. And if your non-diving friends want to join you, professional instructors can have them on scuba within an hour. In the water or out, Spanish Cove is in a class by itself.
For your information, the name alone suggests information management, and that brings computers to mind. Now, computers aren't new to diving, but yours probably doesn't team you up with new dive buddies or give you tips on hot new dive destinations, unless you've hooked up your home computer to CompuServe's Scuba Forum. Scuba Forum is an online database that allows you to go diving without leaving your keyboard. Real-time conferences with dive physicians, instructors, and photography experts allow you to improve your dive skills. If you're already hooked up to CompuServe, just type "Go Diving" at any prompt. Otherwise, you'll need a modem and a CompuServe subscription available from most computer stores. If you're into equipment and new dive gadgets, you'd love DEMA, the annual dive manufacturers trade show. Sea fans joined other members of the dive industry for this year's convention in New Orleans. The hot topic? Patty's new dive tables, the recreational dive planner, and the multi-level wheel. Although more conservative than the old tables, Patty experts say you can get more bottom time by using them.
What this means to the recreational divers is more bottom time, greater precision. You see the 5-foot depth increments. It also means more conservative nitrogen levels and ease of use because we've gotten rid of residual nitrogen. What we're talking about really is a new approach that's more appropriate than conventional tables have been for the recreational diver.
A couple of unusual new products at DEMA, a chemically heated personal body warmer to put under your wetsuit called the Heat Wave, and the Hydrojet, an air-driven propulsion system powered from your scuba tank. I'll be back later with more FYI.
We've had a lot of requests to feature more Hawaiian diving.
That's right, Jimmy. Many divers love these romantic islands where there's adventure without leaving the U.S. And on the Hawaiian Islands, there's activities for the whole family without sacrificing exciting diving.
That's why this issue for our featured destination, we're right here on the Royal Island of Maui. Locals call it the Magic Island. And when you visit the land of rainbows where tropical mountains rise above sunny beaches, you'll know why it deserves the slogan, Maui no Kaoi, Maui is the best. The island blends some of the world's finest beaches, waterfalls, rocky coasts, and first-class resorts into a heady mix. Flowers scent the air, and the sound of the sea is ever present. Maui's a treat for the senses, especially for divers.
Maui is the second largest island in the Pacific Island group known as the Hawaiians and lies in the middle of the chain. It was once a larger island formed by 6 volcanoes. Over millions of years, Maui gradually sank into the sea when the ocean poured into the valleys separating the 4 islands of Maui, Lanai, Molokai, and Kaho'olawe. This group of islands is now known as Maui County, and most of the diving is between them, the best near Lanai and Molokini Crater. You can leave from almost anywhere in the United States in the morning and be in Maui by sunset, connecting either on the west coast or in Honolulu. From the airport, it's about a 45-minute trip to Lahaina on the western shore, where most of the dive operators base their boats.
Because of Maui's volcanic birth,
The unique lava formations and clear waters have sculpted some of the most exotic dives in the world. The lava flow cooled to harden into a varied topography of caverns, pinnacles, rock walls, ridges, archways, tubes, and Hawaiian holes called pukas. The drab lava formations are splashed by a paint box of tropicals. Scientists have identified more than 600 species of fish in Hawaii, 1/3 of them found only on these islands. Some fish appear on cue at almost every dive site, like the Hawaiian butterfly fish, Moorish idols, and the huma huma nuka nuka apua'a.
Jimmy, I can't believe you can say that.
I learned it from hearing Arthur Godfrey sing it, and I've gotten more than one free drink by knowing how to do it right.
More than a score of qualified operators serve the island. Here you'll find stores like the Maui Dive Shop with all the inventory you'd expect from a mainland store, or the unusual. Captain Nemo's, for example, takes snorkelers or divers out together on the catamaran, the Sea Smoke. Dive operators like Central Pacific Divers or Lahaina Divers with its fast boat, the Reliant, take certified divers to all the best inter-island spots.
We're diving with Nick's Aqua Sports. Nick's has a store in Lahaina and a facility at the Hyatt Regency on Ka'anapali Beach to provide scuba and windsurfing instruction. Nick specializes in a new idea, providing luxury dive boat service.
While you're heading for the dive sites across the Maui Channel in the new Blue Chips 2, Nick's large crew serves a continental breakfast. They prepare a fresh lunch between dives and snacks on the way home. And instructors always on board to certify new students or help old ones. You'll never touch a tank on Nick's boat, a true luxury dive operation. Choose your boat carefully on Maui because most of the dive sites are long rides, at least an hour. And most trips are two-tank, all-day affairs. But with a good boat, food, and a top-notch crew, the trip can be a pleasant way to spend a Maui day.
Across the Maui Channel, the diving around the island of Lanai includes more than 20 different sites, with a range of volcanic topography. At First and Second Cathedrals, for example, divers swim through dramatic caverns. In a cove protected from the wind on Lanai, a pinnacle resembling a shark's dorsal marks a site called Shark Fin Rock. 3 lava ridges cooled on the bottom, forming small underwater mountains and valleys. A variety of unique Hawaiian tropicals flourish near Shark Fin. including millet seed butterfly fish that greet the boats seeking handouts. Nearby sites called Sergeant Major and Fish Rock also feature dramatic landscapes. Look for sea turtles at all the spots near Lanai. There are many of them. Some are used to divers and seem to relish being scratched and petted.
Visibility around Maui averages 80 to 100 feet and can sometimes exceed 125. Water temperatures range from 75 in the winter months to 80 in the summer. This year, the El Niño current blessed the waters, raising the temperatures to a range of 78 to 83 degrees. Yet most divers seem to prefer a light wetsuit, especially in the winter.
Of course, the other wonderful plus to Maui diving is the wave of shore activities for the whole family. The island's a favorite for sailors who enjoy the chance to island hop among the 4 Maui County islands. You can also take a leisurely catamaran cruise along the beach. Sailors here follow the tradition of the early Hawaiians who sailed twin-hulled canoes with woven sails, predecessors of the modern catamaran. There's also windsurfing with instruction available at most resorts. For a real adventure, try parasailing. You'll get a bird's eye view of the island, and you can even do it without getting wet at West Maui Parasail from their moving platform. But if you ask them nice, they'll find a way to cool you off. If you're a golfer, Maui boasts several challenging world-class golf courses.
The old whaling port of Lahaina's a miniature world shopping bazaar for sea fans who are also serious shoppers. Lahaina abounds with reminders of the past. The town was the royal capital of the Hawaiian monarchy and later the whaling capital of the world. Today, the entire area is a historic district, resembling a western town with its storefronts and restored whaling vessels. A banyan tree planted in 1873 to commemorate Lahaina's first Protestant Christian mission is now so heavy it requires supports. The Jodo mission with its giant Buddha was built in 1968 to mark the 100-year anniversary of the Japanese immigration to the island. Other landmarks of the island's historic past are everywhere, like the Heritage Garden near the entrance of the Yao State Park. The garden celebrates the many cultures that have melted together to mold the modern island, from Japanese to Portuguese, Filipino to the original Hawaiians, all are honored here.
With all the delights on the surface, divers may be tempted away from the sea. But don't miss Molokini Crater on your trip. It's a must for divers. The boats can't get there every day because the channel may be rough. In fact, divers prone to seasickness may want to come prepared with their favorite remedy for all Maui-based diving. The sheer vertical face of the outside of the crater, a crescent-shaped bowl, harbors a number of excellent dive sites. The entire mid-channel area is a marine conservation district. This is where divers most often encounter pelagics. We thrilled to find manta rays feeding on plankton and white-tipped reef sharks. The west end of the crater submerges to form a place called Reef's End. Lava slabs and ledges serve as resting spots for moray eels and sharks. Lobsters thrive here too. Backside Molokini is a rare treat with a vertical drop of 250 feet and visibility approaching 125 feet. Focus off the wall and you may see manta rays and schools of large fish. But some of the best of Maui's pleasures lie in the undeveloped backcountry. Here, nature lovers can commune to their heart's content at places like the Yao Needle, a nature preserve with hiking trails and camping facilities. Explore the backcountry by horseback or bicycle. And there's lots to see, so a rental car is a good idea. And for some backcountry tours, four-wheel is a necessity. Or simply enjoy a leisurely drive through the miles of pineapple fields, sugarcane, and mountain valleys. The beaches are some of Hawaii's best. The early Hawaiians invented the surfboard, and today you can watch some of the world's most famous surfers brave the Maui surf. Many visitors top off their island tour with a visit to the volcanic crater Haleakala. The summit's an hour-and-a-half drive from the airport, so the visit can take most of the day. The high air is clear and thin over the crater, and it can get cold, so take a sweater. Its impressive 33 square miles is big enough to hold the entire island of Manhattan. By foot or on horseback, you can explore the crater. Further down Haleakala's slopes lie lush jungles, dotted with waterfalls and secluded swimming holes.
For me, Maui's not just an island of romance, but it's a playground for kids of all ages.
You know, just as the rainbows come together so gently with the mountains, it seems like lots of great things come together on Maui. Time and tide and sun and surf and people from all around the world.
East meets west, macadamia nuts and Kona coffee.
Rum and Coke, and man and beast.
Lahaina's history as a whaling town is displayed in the Lahaina Whaling Museum and the ship Carthaginian.
During the 1850s, the town was the scene of many brawls between the whalers' appetites and the missionary morality. One disgruntled whaling crew fired 5 cannonballs into the mission house. Today, the mission house is a museum. During the winter months, whale watching is perhaps the most popular activity for divers and other lovers of the sea. The endangered humpbacks use the channel as a breeding and birthing ground. Because these special sea creatures are vanishing, boats and divers are now rightly prohibited from coming too close. The Endangered Species Act and the Marine Mammal Protection Act prohibits boats, planes, or divers from coming within 100 yards of the whales. Many boats turn off their motors and wait for the whales to approach them. But in an earlier era, underwater photographer Lee Tepley preserved this humpback encounter with a mother and calf.
Some 600 to 1,200 North Pacific humpbacks migrate from their Arctic feeding grounds over a 6-month period. Scientists have learned that most individual whales stay in Hawaiian waters for around 75 days. So, beginning in early October, their misty plumes spout from the channel. During the height of the season, February to March, dozens of tour boats cruise the channel. Most visitors see the whales from a distance, occasionally spying their 20-foot wide tail flukes before deep dives. Displays of tail lobs, that's slapping the water, waving one or both of their 15-foot long pectoral fins are common, but a full breach is a special show.
An array of accommodation options awaits the diver on Maui. From the historic Pioneer Inn, the whalers' favorite in a bygone era, to the restored Plantation Inn, to the luxury high-rise hotels and condos of Kaanapali, the choices are seemingly endless.
We're staying at the Hyatt Regency. Worth a visit even if you're not staying here. Do you know of any other resort that has a full-time gamekeeper on its staff? There's an extensive bird collection, which even includes penguins. The landscaped Japanese gardens are a serene display. And a priceless collection of Asian art is featured by the hotel in special tours. Then there's a series of waterfalls, swimming pools, and grottos. The hotel boasts 4 fine restaurants and a variety of rooms. A number of fine shops and a good beach assure that some visitors will never leave this Disneyland for adults.
Maui diving can be deceptive and mysterious, requiring a careful diving eye to discover her treasures. The stark and apparently dreary lava formations require exploration to find the secret creatures hiding in many nooks and crannies. Bring a light to look into every crevice. A splendid variety of shells, nudibranchs, crabs, and shrimps await you if you peer into the cracks. This is not the lazy diving of some lush Caribbean locations where every look provides almost too much to see. Divers need to stay aware and widen their diving eye here. But the extra effort is worth it. A rock that appears to be rubble may move and become a turtle or lobster.
We're frequently asked whether Hawaiian diving is as good as Caribbean. We like to answer that it's not better or worse, but it's different. If you come to Hawaii expecting lush, live, colorful coral of the Caribbean, you'll be disappointed. But Maui offers its own rewards for the discerning diver. Warm waters, dramatic formations, and a chance to study Hawaiian tropicals found nowhere else in the world. And frequent encounters with pelagics like sharks and mannas and whales. To us, that's what's best about the diving here, the opportunity to experience variety. And topside Maui can't be matched for the combination of lively surface activities, world-class resorts, and backcountry pleasures.
Dive knives are something the divers should have handy.
John Evans, our equipment specialist, shows us the features to look for to get the most out of these tools.
One of the handiest accessories available for scuba divers, both above and below the water, is a dive knife. Despite its fierce look, it's not designed to be used as a weapon. It's a multi-purpose tool, useful for digging, prying, measuring, pounding, communicating, and of course, cutting. Because of this, to get the most out of a dive knife, you need to look for more than just a shiny, sharp edge. A good functional dive knife will have a blade that extends all the way through the handle, so it won't break off during heavy use. You can usually spot a full-length blade from the solid butt cap, which can be very useful for pounding. Naturally, you also want a comfortable grip with a good feel, and a good sheath to hold the knife and protect the diver from the blade. The dive knife you choose should be made from a good grade of stainless steel. The grade of stainless is usually stamped on the blade. If it's not there, look in the product literature, and if you can't find it there, you might think twice about buying the knife. 3 different grades of stainless are commonly used in dive knives. Each has different features. Number 304 stainless contains a lot of chrome. That means minimum maintenance, but at the cost of a soft metal blade that won't hold a really sharp edge. Also, a knife made from 304 can bend when used for prying. A blade made from 420 stainless is harder. It makes a good prying tool. Most blunt-end knives are made from 420 stainless, but expect to clean it more often. If you want a very sharp knife, look for one made of 440 stainless. It'll hold an edge the best, so knives made for cleaning fish are usually made of 440. However, 440 stainless is very brittle and is easily broken if used for prying. To get around this, Spyderco has combined a 440 stainless blade with a more durable steel pry bar. Also, these knives require cleaning every time they get wet. Fortunately, they do clean up quite easily. Keep in mind that all steel can rust. Even a soft 304 blade may require cleaning from time to time. There are 2 general styles of dive knives, stiletto and blunt-tipped. A stiletto-style knife is designed primarily for cutting. Its sharp point is handy for cleaning fish, for example. A blunt-tipped knife is a more multi-purpose tool. It's sturdier for prying, well-shaped for digging. It's probably safer, and it can even be used as a screwdriver. Both styles come in a range of sizes. Options you might look for in a dive knife include a line cutter to quickly sever fish line or light rope. It's especially useful when you're wearing heavy gloves. A serrated edge can be used for sawing. Ogle's laser knife has a second rod-style blade for multi-directional sawing through wood, glass, plastic, or even metal. Everybody knows that objects appear larger underwater, so some knife blades come engraved with a ruler, so you won't bring up any more undersized lobsters or abalone. Quillions, or guards, stop a diver's hand from sliding onto the cutting edge of the knife. Of course, you can choose a color that coordinates with your other dive gear and is bright enough to be easily spotted if you drop your knife underwater. Think about where you want to wear your knife while you're selecting it. Small knives worn on the arm are easy to reach, but they can get tangled in your BCD. Larger knives are usually more comfortable when they're worn on the lower leg, and wearing it on the inside reduces the chances of entanglement. Look for a sheath or scabbard that has some way to lock the knife safely away so you don't cut yourself or lose the knife. Some sheaths have a rubber ring that fits over the handle end. Make sure the ring fits tight, though, or you could lose the knife. Some rings are difficult to use with just one hand. Ogle's Z-Lock knife uses a spring-loaded button, hard plastic sheath to secure the knife. It's easy to use, even with one hand, but check the mechanism occasionally for corrosion. This Techna knife sheath uses a spring-loaded release lever also. It's designed to be operated with one hand. In fact, using 2 hands can result in slit fingertips. The Techna sheath also comes incorporated in a console. Some full-length wetsuits have a pocket sewn in for stowing a knife. Many sheaths can be threaded onto the 2-inch nylon webbing of your BCD or weight belt. This is probably the most comfortable place to wear your knife if you're not wearing a wetsuit. Remember, though, if you have to ditch your weight belt, you've also ditched your knife. Obviously, there's a lot new in dive knives since this model was in use back in the 1940s. If you want to be on the cutting edge of what's available in these useful instruments, stop into your local dive store. Pick up a few handy pointers. This is John Evans for Sea Fans.
If you really don't want to leave the continental United States or even get on an airplane, we we've found a great place for you.
Key Largo, Florida, one of the islands you can drive to. Protected tropical fish thrive on the Key Largo reefs, and now there are more wrecks for advanced divers.
Old movie buffs will remember the film shot in the Caribbean Club. If you're a film fan, this destination has probably long been on your list.
Bogey and Bacall made it famous. Now divers have claimed it. It's perfect for beginners, a paradise for fish lovers. That's Key Largo.
Key Largo today is a blend of old and new. The palm trees and ocean fronts remain, but modern conveniences, hotels, restaurants, and shops have ballooned to serve a bustling tourist trade. And Key Largo provides a central base to explore the other keys and the nearby Everglades. The Florida Keys wind like a long chain of irregular beads southwest of Miami. The first one, Key Largo, is a mere 60-minute drive from Miami by car down US 1. Several serendipitous forces have fueled the boom in Key Largo diving. Convenient location, the warm and clear waters, the nutrient-rich Gulf Stream, and the protected sanctuary of Pennicamp Park. The park harbors hatcheries for a rainbow of tropicals. And the abundance of professional dive operators has fed the growth. Although most of the dive shops cluster just outside Pennicamp Park, all of the operators run trips there. Divers who want to sample shore diving may be surprised to learn that there are few reefs within swimming distance. Instead, the island shores are fringed with mangroves, whose root fingers reach down to trap the debris that forms the islands. Shallow flats spread out from these islands with patches of turtle grass, sand, and soft corals to provide an ideal nursery for the schools of juvenile fish that mass on the reef offshore.
Stephen Frink is the president of the Keys Association of Dive Operators, known as CATO, in addition to being a well-known underwater photographer. Stephen, what is it about this environment that creates such an ideal place for fish?
I presume the primary consideration is the fact that it's been a marine sanctuary now for 20-some years, and the fish that may have been subject to fish collection elsewhere and the corals that have been collected were saved from that human predation here.
There are so many dive operators in this area. Are there any advantages for sport divers because of the big infrastructure for divers here?
Should mean a tremendous degree of comfort as they come to the Florida Keys. The boats are very sophisticated. You have dive boats that range from 34 foot for a 6-passenger boat, typical 6-passenger boat, up to as much as 65 feet. And they're all Coast Guard certified. That's an advantage. There are fire retardant bulkheads. All the things that mean Coast Guard certification and make a boat cost more are in place here. The captains are Coast Guard certified captains. They're all CPR and first aid trained.
I know Molasses Reef is a very popular dive here. Can you tell me about it?
The coral heads are very high profile. You've got a spur and groove formation with very good marine life. Oh geez, I can't tell you how many hard corals there are, but you know, elkhorn, star coral, brain coral, pillar coral, it's all there.
Molasses is like many areas along the patch reefs in the Keys, which house small tropical fish common in aquariums. Most also shelter juveniles. These tiny aquarium tropicals are usually quite territorial and stay close to their habitat. Christ of the Deep is one of the most popular sites in this shallow area. Cast in Italy and donated to the Underwater Society of America by an Italian industrialist and dive equipment manufacturer, it's a replica of a statue that lies off the coast of southern Italy. The Society placed the statue on the east side of Dry Rocks, an area noted for large brain corals. The water is only around 25 feet here, allowing beginning divers and snorkelers a chance to visit this memorial to eternal life in the sea. Between dives in Key Largo, visitors have a wide choice in accommodations. Hotels, condos, and seaside cottages abound. You can take your pick of quarters to fit your style and pocketbook. and there are campgrounds for the budget traveler or the adventurous. Most of the larger hotels and condos have dive packages with the individual dive shops. You can even stay underwater. Divers can sleep overnight in a mangrove lagoon in Jan Koblick's underwater habitat. After choosing your accommodations, you'll be faced with a tough decision on dive operators. Scores of qualified dive shops serve Key Largo. Most operators in Key Largo have fast modern boats. The dive sites range from 15 minutes to an hour out over generally calm seas. And there are large and small groups to suit your taste. Unless needed to help out a novice, the dive master may well stay on the boat. Divers tend to spread out over the shallow reefs and problems are more easily handled from the surface. In the Keys, the water temperatures range from about 70 to 84 degrees. A light wetsuit will keep you comfortable in the winter, but a skin suit is all you need in the summer. Because there are so many qualified operators in Key Largo, it's a perfect place for both beginning and advanced divers to take classes. You can be sure of qualified American-style instruction. The shallow, clear waters, yet with diving diversity, make it an ideal location to brush up or begin your diving skills.
Are there any special requirements for divers here, such as inspection of logbooks or any experience requirements?
The dive operators, the members of the Keys Association of Dive Operators do check logbooks, and it's something that a traveler expecting to come to the Florida Keys should be aware of. And particularly now that we have some more challenging dives like the shipwreck of the Bibb and the Duane, it's very important that the operators be able to gauge the experience level.
One program the dive operators have rallied behind in Key Largo is an extensive expansion of the artificial reefs, including the recent sinking of the U.S. Coast Guard cutters Bibb and Duane.
We were counting on a very long-term situation with these ships, and we didn't want to take the risk of perhaps having an explosion cause jagged holes or anything that could possibly harm our divers. So the experimental dive team opted to scuttle the vessels. They put a support vessel right beside the Bibb and the Duane, and they had 3 massive pumps that pumped water into the holds and the bilges, and then they had 2 cutouts at the stern, and when the water level or water line actually got low enough, then they knocked out the plugs, the water rushed in, and the vessel sank.
What are the 2 boats like to dive now?
Well, you know, I dove on the Duane 12 hours after it went down. It was a spectacular day, 200-foot visibility, not a breath of current, and this thing just sat there like a white beacon. And it was such a sense of accomplishment to have been involved with it, not for me necessarily, but for the whole community, to have done this. And now we had the shipwreck, and a world-class shipwreck at that.
Why were they sunk so deep?
First of all, you have to imagine the immensity of these vessels. Each one is 327 foot long, 42-foot beam, and if you take the Duane, for example, sitting upright in the sand at 120 feet, if we didn't cut the main mast off, the mast would have actually stuck out of the water and would have been a hazard to navigation. Our permit, you can't just arbitrarily put a shipwreck down. You have to get a Corps of Engineers permit, and our permit specified that there had to be 50-foot relief between the top of our artificial reef and the surface of the water.
South of Key Largo, the Artificial Reef Committee also recently sunk the Eagle in 110 feet of water. Fish adopted the massive wreck almost immediately, and coral began to grow soon thereafter. The flourishing of so much life on a barren hull is a validation of the Artificial Reef Project. Divers can study the history of the Keys underwater on the older wrecks. The ocean floor here is strewn with artifacts. In one area called Elbow Reef near Pennicamp Park, there are 3 wrecks. Furthest north and offshore is a metal-hulled steamer known as Towanda. Most of it sits bent and scattered. Just offshore is the barge known as the City of Washington, now crewed by schools of lively fish. Fish feeders love the barge, and photographers enjoy the wreck because the walls and jagged metal form fine silhouettes. The Civil War wreck lies isolated in a flat area of sand and grass near Elbow Reef.
It's an old wooden ship, and it has pins metal pins that held the timbers together. Now much of the wooden timber has rotted away, but it leaves a framework of pins, and within this maze of framework you have grunts and snapper, and there's a half dozen spotted morays that live there, and angelfish and copper sweepers. It's just a tremendous ecosystem in a very concentrated pocket.
Not all the sunken vessels here were smashed on the reefs. A German submarine torpedoed the Benwood. The freighter miraculously survived the blow, only to be accidentally rammed by a friendly vessel as she limped back to shore. For years, the Navy used her half-submerged hull for bombing practice, but the Benwood was eventually dynamited and came to rest in 50 feet of water just off the reef. All of the artificial reefs attract a parade of tropical fish. Diving in Key Largo is like turning the pages of the Audubon Guide. Grunts sometimes swarm in such numbers that it's hard to photograph other fish. Barracuda form silvery files along the reef. All kinds of angelfish thrive here, including queen, gray, and French varieties. Clouds of copper sweepers gather around the wrecks, and trumpetfish prosper. Especially tame are the well-fed eels like our friend George. Rarely seen Atlantic spades, filefish, and swarms of silversides also populate the Key Largo waters. One unusual natural resource in the Keys is John Pannekamp State Park. The park was formed in 1963 as the country's first underwater marine park. There are protected mangrove lagoons and reefs here, but also activities for the whole family, including canoeing, nature hikes, windsurfing, and snorkeling. The park protects a 25-mile stretch of reef from north of Carrisford, south to Molasses, and inshore to the coast. A presidential proclamation of the first National Marine Sanctuary extended the underwater park boundaries from 3 miles to 6 miles east. The combined park and sanctuary encompass a total area of 183 square miles and protects the water out to a 300-foot depth. Key Largo offers an unusual combination of colorful shallow diving for the beginner with enough wrecks and fish to keep an advanced diver happily occupied. No matter where you dive, be sure to save time at the end of the day to scout the best location for that most famous Keys tradition, sunset watching. Always a perfect end to a perfect Key Largo diving day. Now, from the relatively civilized settings of Key Largo and Maui, we'd like to take you on a true Pacific adventure.
John Evans and CFAN's reporter Carol Montgomery bring us the timeless islands of Yap. It's Micronesia at its unspoiled best.
The 20th century is descending upon the sparkling waters and rich landscape of these secluded islands. 3 days a week, a modern jet touches down in Yap, bringing cargo, returning islanders, and a few lucky visitors to this unspoiled corner of Micronesia. But fortunately, much of the color and tradition of the past remains and coexists comfortably with the new. This blending of cultures greets us immediately as we are warmly welcomed at the airport with traditional Yapese flower leis, or nunus. The nunus express the bounty of the islands and the Yapese willingness to share what nature provides.
And the islands are bountiful, especially underwater where divers have just begun to explore. As we drop below the surface at Gilman Point, the southernmost dive site on Yap, my anticipation heightens. Knowing we're some of the first people ever to scuba dive here fills me with wonder as to what we may see below.
The activity of myriad fish species enlivens the reef, a wall elegantly draped with coral. The diverse colors, shapes, and sizes of marine life makes me feel as if we're drifting lazily through a gigantic underwater kaleidoscope.
Often the deep gleams of silver from larger fish penetrate the deep blue. A quick turn of my head and I'm suddenly a member of a large school of jacks, or rainbow runners as they are more commonly called by the Yapese. A special sense of freedom and tranquility comes from being accepted into this intimate group. The wall drops sharply at Gilman from 30 to hundreds of feet and is cut along its face by intriguing crevices. I emerge from one to encounter a white-tip reef shark that quickly undulates away from our unexpected presence.
Medium-sized reef sharks are a common sight on almost every dive here, but they don't stay around as long. Yet we are able to examine some of the more sedentary reef inhabitants.
I'm intrigued by this large sea cucumber. Coral-eating crown-of-thorns starfish dot the reef. They should be handled, if at all, very carefully and only while wearing gloves. The sharp spines can produce very toxic puncture wounds.
Hidden amongst the nooks and crannies of the coral, we see a large fluorescent blue anemone. The bulbous tentacles bear millions of stinging cells, but not to the tenants, the striped clownfish who live here. They've developed a mucus covering which inhibits the anemone's venomous nematocysts. A graceful black and yellow crinoid anchors itself to the coral, becoming a large food-catching net which spreads welcoming arms to plankton and algae.
Crinoids are competent swimmers, but they are usually always found lazily attached to the coral. They decorate much of the reef here. For these little damselfish, their chances of survival against larger predators are increased by their association with the coral. When a larger fish or even a diver comes too near their coral mansion, they are quick to dart into safety.
Similarly, yap has been rather hidden for years, tucked away in a far corner of the western Pacific, a little over 500 miles southwest of Guam. One of the federated states of Micronesia, the state of Yap is approximately 74 square miles of land and is comprised of the 4 large adjoining islands of Yap, Ramung, Gagaltamil, and Mop, plus many small outer islands and atolls.
All are surrounded by a coral barrier reef. Diving almost anywhere on the western side of the island is spectacular, with 81-degree water temperatures and anywhere from 50 to 150-foot visibility, depending upon tides.
The state of Yap is primarily undeveloped, except for the capital of Colonia, built around a bay on the main island. Here you'll find Yap's 2 hotels, the ESA, with a restaurant overlooking the bay, and the Ryview, with both a bar and a restaurant. Although neither is stylish or resorty by American standards, they do offer air conditioning, private baths, and a very hospitable stay.
Perhaps the best way to truly experience Yap, though, is to spend a night at a native guest house like the one for visitors at the Beshael Cultural Center on Mop Island. You won't find modern conveniences, but you will find unspoiled beaches to comb, and at the end of the day, a private thatched bungalow to relax in.
Like a night in a native house, a tour of the island helps the visitor see how long-standing traditions and cultural practices remain a strong part of today's Yap. Jesse, our friend and guide, teaches us an initial lesson on being respectful to the local people on our tour.
We have to carry a branch when we enter a village to show the people from the village that we're respecting them.
I see.
That means you're respecting.
Just carry it up in the air, or?
Well, you have to go like this.
Oh, hold it like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
When carrying a branch or some other article in the hand, we're signifying to the people in the villages that we come in peace and friendship. Traditional Yapese life is organized around the family and the village, and Jesse explains some aspects of an ancient village to us.
Mainly, it's made by the people from this village. Mainly made by, especially for a meeting place. Mm-hmm. And this platform over here is made by men and women. Men and women. They work together. This thing over here is mainly for chiefs. It's more like a back rest or what? something like that.
Right.
This is what we call it roro. So they put the fish here, and then they cut it into pieces according to the number of the chiefs. Just, each chief will get his share.
As we tour the island, I'm impressed by the hand-built stone pathways and by the ancient architecture of the meeting houses or faloos. A faloo traditionally served several different functions in the community. Besides being a meeting house, it was used as a school, a storage area, and a living area for young men. We are told to always ask permission before ever approaching a meeting house. But permission seems to be freely granted, and we are warmly welcomed.
An important element of Yappy's life is the ownership of the legendary stone money. Quarried of calcite from the glistening limestone caves of Palau, these moon-shaped wheels had to be brought to Yap in tiny canoes or rafts on a 250-mile journey across open ocean. The first stone money was brought to Yap over 1,000 years ago. The discs are valued not so much by their size, but by the effort it took to make them, and the exciting story which lies behind each one. Many times, entire crews met watery graves in their quest to bring home this precious money.
Later in the 1800s, traders from the West allowed their large ships to be used to transport the stones in exchange for copra. An Irish-American by the name of David O'Keefe is best remembered in history for this, as some of the largest pieces of money, up to 12 feet across, were shipped during this period.
The voyages for stone money were stopped by the Germans when they controlled the islands around the turn of the century. A count taken during the period of Japanese occupation in 1929 showed over 13,000 pieces on the island. Probably as many as half that number were destroyed by the Japanese during World War II.
Now their exportation is restricted, and the best collections of stone money are seen today in the village-owned money banks. A Yapese money bank has no guards, no tellers, and certainly no steel vaults. But then again, who needs them? Just try buying a soda pop with this coin.
At the end of the day, we're treated to a banquet of traditional Yapese food at a park on a hill overlooking the islands. Mouth-watering delights from the surrounding land and water are arrayed before us. Mangrove crabs, clams, chicken and banana leaves, fish and pork and taro leaves. It's a bountiful buffet. Our host, Joe Tamag, owner of the Ryview Hotel, and our newfound Yapese friends who worked all day to prepare the feast make us feel right at home.
The next day, it's back to diving. We travel by boat to reach the open ocean which surrounds Yap. Thick mangrove swamps line the canal dividing Yap Island from Goggle Tamil. During the 1800s, Yap was occupied by several forces. Spain, Germany, and Japan have all contributed to the steady modernization of the islands. It was during the German occupation that this useful canal was excavated by hand.
Our first dive spot today is in Mill Channel on the northwest corner of the Barrier Reef. The normally clear water is churned up by the outgoing tides, and we find ourselves in only 30 feet or so of visibility. Undaunted, we swim on in search of the majestic manta ray. In the haunting half-light of the channel, one appears, a massive form, hanging in the current, feeding on plankton borne by the tide.
Mantas are often called devil rays. They may have inherited this unjust name due to their ghoulish, bat-like appearance. But we know these creatures to be only shy, graceful flyers which soar confidently through the water, using their pectoral fins much like wings.
Our second dive is further south, outside the reef. The water is much clearer, yet the food carried by the outgoing tide supports vast numbers of fish. In addition to the clouds of reef fish, we find schools of various jacks and mackerel.
Here we find a mini wall built by an amazing variety of corals. Massive star corals create pinnacles and mounds. Table corals spread themselves wide, sheltering a variety of reef fish. green lettuce corals sprout in shallow valleys. Softer daisy and leather corals extend their polyps to feed. Tangles of antler coral decorate the reef tops. Arrays of pillar corals point toward the surface. Giant plate corals terrace the slope below us.
Above the water, Yap is blanketed in earthen tones of greens and browns, accommodating a dense network of tropical vegetation. The stately nipa palm shoots skyward, as if keeping guard over its large brown seed cluster, which lies nestled at its base. Mangrove roots thrust up from the warm, swampy water like sharp needles sticking up from a prickly pincushion. The swamps fringing the blue coastline provide a cozy home for the mangrove crab.
This tiny cherry red eating machine constantly forages for minute organisms in the sticky mud where it both lives and feeds. Dense coconut palms are majestic shade providers, a staple for the Yapese people. Coconuts are harvested for use in a variety of crucial ways. For fuel, coconut husks are dried and burned like coal. The sweet milk and meat provide nourishment. Even an island dog appreciates a handout of fresh coconut.
We're fortunate to be here March 1st for Yap Day, the day-long festival which brings village people of all ages together for feasting and dancing. Visitors are welcome and encouraged to participate in the day's events. Coconut palm fronds woven together make open-air shelters, producing cool shade from the intense Micronesian sun. Local produce and homemade arts and crafts are displayed for all to see.
Similar to a state fair, village children and craftsmen have presented their own outrigger canoes, storyboards, woven baskets, purses, and even thick grass skirts. All will be judged in today's award contests. Western-style clothing is becoming more and more popular among Yapese men and women, but not all. Be prepared to see men in loincloths, or thews as they are called, and topless women in grass skirts or lava, woven material wrapped at the waist. On special occasions such as today, everyone wears the traditional thews and grass skirts, from the very old to the very young. Well, almost everyone.
Even though Yap has striking differences from our way of life, some things appear to be universal, like a mother ensuring that her daughter will look her very best for the dances. The highlight of Yap Day is the dancing. Yapese dances and chants are used to pass stories along from one generation to another. The young women from the villages usually perform the more rigorous bamboo stick dances. And you don't have to be here on Yap Day to see traditional dancing. Many of the villages perform these dances all through the year. The men, dressed in ceremonial thews, carry gifts of Yapese shell money for their family members participating in the dance.
Yap Day is also a perfect setting for sampling another Micronesian tradition, the chewing of betel nut. It contains a substance called ericotine, an alkaloid that acts on the central nervous system to produce a brief stimulant effect. On Yap, it's an almost universal practice, even for young children.
The culture enthralls me. Betel nut, grass skirts, and stone money. But fortunately for divers, Yap is not locked in its past. Yap Divers is the new full-service dive operation on the island, with a complete retail store and training facility. Yap Divers features new aluminum tanks and rental equipment and uses speedy runabouts to transport divers on the 35-minute to 1-hour rides to dive sites on the west side. This summer, a custom-built 38-foot Munson dive boat, equipped to carry 16 divers, will be in service.
Right now, fewer than 500 total dives have ever been done at Yap. And for us, each one is an adventure. The populations of reef fish, like butterflies and angelfish, are enormous. Most, like these Moorish idols, seem unaccustomed to the presence of divers and are quite shy. I enjoy the chance just to observe them from a distance amidst the rich coral growth. Much of the potentially great diving around Yap is yet to be explored, and most of the sites we dive are unnamed. We've christened this one the Magic Kingdom. It's found near a wrecked fishing boat along the southwest part of the Barrier Reef. A maze of coral canyons, pillars, and mounds fill the reef face. Micronesian fantasy diving at its best.
A little to the north, an area of colorful grottos furrows the reef, and more opportunities for exploration await. The holes provide shelter from the currents for soft corals, so we find lacy gorgonians nestled here. It's truly a great place for any kind of sea fans. Well, Carol, Yap certainly is an adventure, isn't it?
Yeah, it takes a long time to get here, and the facilities and the accommodations are Spartan, but I'm sure glad I'm here.
Oh, me too. The diving's some of the best that I've found anywhere, and the culture and tradition that's alive here, it simply exists nowhere else.
You know, the one thing I will never forget is how we've been welcomed and made to feel at home by everyone here.
It's kind of like it's become our island.
So even though we eventually have to leave, I know that the adventure of Yap will always be with us.
There probably isn't a dive location in the world more off the beaten path, yet easier to get to, than Yap. Getting to Yap is easy, although time-consuming. Take Continental from the mainland to Hawaii and you're halfway there. Stay with Continental for another long flight to Guam, then Air Micronesia for a short hop to Yap. Yap is only 650 miles north of the equator, so the climate is definitely tropical. Be prepared for less than deluxe hotels. The Yappies speak English, but you'll be intrigued with their native dialects. Despite all you've heard about stone money, the dollar is the standard currency, and electrical service is compatible with American standards. Since Yap is so far from home, consider visiting another Micronesian dive destination like Palau or Truk while you're in the Pacific. But be sure to allow enough time to see all this fascinating island and the sights it has to offer.
Introducing an intelligent display of your behavior. Tecna's new Digitech, a fully computerized dive console. Digitech is changing the face of underwater instruments in a diver-friendly way. The Digitech from Tecna tracks 11 separate dive functions and automatically displays them in a logical, easy-to-read format. Imagine a pictograph of your scuba tank that actually shows your air supply at a glance, and a remaining airtime function that constantly updates how many minutes of air you have left. The Digitech includes a unique scrolling function that allows you to recall information from up to 4 previous dives. And best of all, Digitech lights up in the dark automatically. No more sweeping your console with a light to monitor depth, bottom time, or remaining air. Tecna's diver-friendly Digitech, your new diving companion with perfect recall. See Digitech at your dive dealer today.
For more detailed information on the destinations we visit, use the viewer's service card accompanying this issue. And if you have news for or about divers, send it to me at CFans. For FYI, I'm Betsy Howard.
Bidding you aloha from Maui, I'm Lynn Eisaguirre.
And I'm Jimmy Ibbotson, wishing you great diving from CFans Video Magazine. Mahalo!
Sea Fans is a production of Passage Home Communications, the video publishing company that also brings you Set Sail Video Magazine, the new magazine on videotape for sailors and other water sports enthusiasts. Look for Set Sail and Sea Fans at marinas and dive stores everywhere, or call 1-800-622-8767 to subscribe.